It's very exciting for me, actually. It's my first edition that has come out in German, and it's the international launch of the book here today. So I'm very excited that you can be a part of that. Thank you. If you want later, after the session, if you want to get a signature on the book, apparently it increases the price on eBay later if you want to sell it. So they asked me to talk about neobanks today, given that I am the founder of a neobank called Movin. It's not a seagull. It's a bank startup in New York. We started a couple of years ago, and we just announced on Monday that we have formed a partnership with TD Bank in Canada. Earlier in the year, we launched with Westpac in New Zealand. So we have access now to about 5 million customers in 3 countries on the Movin platform. By the end of next year, we expect that we will have access to approximately 30 million customers in more than 20 countries on the Movin platform. This is our effort to change the concept of the bank account as a downloadable bank account around the world. The Kindle of banking, if you like. This is our objective, to try and create a completely downloadable bank account and get that onto as many phones, as many apps as possible around the world. Now, we realized we could not do this by starting up as a traditional bank in the United States and growing. Because if you have the aim of 100 million customers, which was our aim from the start, then to do it as a traditional bank, the capital adequacy requirements alone would prevent us from raising enough venture capital to do that. So we had to come up with an alternative approach. And this alternative approach was to be the front end for the bank account for many different banks around the world, but to revolutionize the day-to-day model of a bank account. So I want to talk about that in some more detail with you today. But I thought I would start by asking the question, which is, are bankers soon going to disappear? This is a question that creates a lot of tension at conferences like this. People are saying, are you saying that we don't need banks anymore? I think we'll need banks for a long time. This is not what I'm getting at. I'm not saying that banks will disappear, but we don't need as many bankers in the future as we have in the past. Because like other revolutions of technology, as the industry changes its model of distribution and becomes more efficient, a lot of the manual processing, a lot of the manual compliance and legal work and processing will disappear. So we don't need as many bankers. But we need lots of new skills in the banking industry to survive. Not necessarily bankers, but we may need storytellers, experience designers, technologists, behavioral psychologists, community advocates and community influencers. Lots of skills, but not necessarily bankers. So then the question is, well, what about banking like the bank branch? Do we need branches? Well, we've seen lots of other industries go through these changes of disruption, or changes in the distribution model, rather. And we've seen that the traditional distribution mechanism has disappeared. Now, I hear a lot of bankers will say, but banking is different because it's a regulated industry and customers need advice. This is why they need branches. And that's not correct. I'll explain why I think that's not correct in a few minutes. It's not correct because behavior around banking is fundamentally changing. If we think about why borders and bookstores generally have suffered, it's because the way people bought a book changed. Ironically, here I am talking about this and I still have a physical book at the conference today, right? But actually, Breaking Banks is my first book where we have sold more digital copies than physical copies. But this must be something about banking in terms of readership. We've lagged other book types because in 2008, Amazon launched the Kindle, and it was only 3 years later, in 2011, that digital books already were outpacing physical books. So let's understand, we have a physical book in a physical bookstore, and then we go to a physical book on an online store, and then along comes the Kindle. It's a digital book in a digital store. You don't need any physicality, no physical distribution, no physical product except a tablet, a Kindle, or iPad. And from that point forward, we realized that people were not going to buy physical books again in the same way. Always, from this point forward, digital downloads of books would be the method most people would buy a book. It had fundamentally changed. And this is why Borders and these other bookstores closed, because the buying behavior around a book had changed. Now, once you can download your bank account to your smartphone, and you don't need to go to a branch to open a bank account, this is going to have a similar effect. And I know you're thinking to yourself, yes, but what happens when someone needs a mortgage or they need investment advice? They're going to still need a branch. We'll get to that, don't worry. So, what we have to talk about here is the future. I thought I would start with looking at some predictions of the future. And if we look at the past, at some of the predictions we've made in the past, and how successful that has been, that should inform us how good we're going to be at predicting the future for banking. Well, 100 years ago, we thought that this would be the future of the home. Robots that would clean our carpets and cook our meals and do our washing and ironing. We now have robots that clean the carpet, but it's not quite the same as what we had anticipated 100 years ago. We also thought 100 years ago we would have flying cars. And it's probably going to be that we will have self-driving cars before we have flying cars. But this future, we didn't predict it so well. But sometimes we got it right, yeah? You remember Captain Kirk with his communicator? Yeah? It looks very similar to this, right? So sometimes we do get the predictions right of the future. Sometimes maybe we're a little bit off. Will we have flying cars one day? Absolutely. Will we have robots around the house? Well, we have robots in many parts of our life already today. And the emergence of machine intelligence over the next 30 years will bring us a whole suite of automation and intelligence in technology that does very similar tasks to robots. And if you're living in Japan, definitely you'll have robots in your life in the short term. But we don't necessarily need robots in the way we thought we did, because automation is changing or affecting us in different ways. Here's the point though. Technology disruption is a norm. For 250 years, we have been facing technology disruption since the invention of the steam engine. Now, I will talk about Uber in a moment, the new app that's facing some resistance in Germany and other places in the world. Let me ask you this question. Looking back over the last 250 years, when a new technology like the steam engine or the telegraph or the telephone or electricity or the computer, when a new technology like this has been developed, how many times in the past 250 years do you think that a traditional business has successfully defended their business model from technology disruption? How many times? I can tell you. 0 times. So technology disruption is inevitable. If you think in the banking industry that technology is not going to disrupt your business, then you would be the only exception in 250 years of technology disruption. That is highly unlikely. Would you agree? So we have to get ready for the disruption. What do we learn about looking at these 250 years of disruption? Well, let us start with the steam machine, the machine looms. In the late 1700s, the textiles industry was one of the biggest industries in the world. Agriculture was the biggest, farming. And we had these artisans who would do the weaving on special weaving looms. In the late 1700s, machine looms, steam machine-driven looms, started to emerge that required unskilled labor, such as children who could operate these weaving looms. There was a group of individuals, artisans, in London that protested violently the creation of this technology. They would come into factories and smash these steam machines. They were called Luddites. Have you heard that term before? We sometimes use this term to describe people that don't like technology. We call them a Luddite because of the textile workers. They called their fictitious leader General Ludd or King Ludd, and they would go in and smash machines. In 1812, when Napoleon was attacking the British from the French borders, and they were defending from this attack, there were more British soldiers deployed in Britain, stopping the rioters and the protesters against this new steam machine technology than having to defend against Napoleon. That's how serious this threat was. And yet, this technology changed. When we look at farming, when you look at the employment patterns, this is a graph showing farm employment in the United States from 1900 through to the 1960s compared with the introduction of the combustion engine tractor. You can see a direct correlation, a reduction of employment and an increase in the number of tractors as technology is introduced. So whenever we see technology disruption, we see a pattern change in terms of employment. We see jobs change, new skills are required, the old skills are made redundant. You starting to get nervous yet? Yeah? Okay, so we see this pattern over and over again with every industry facing technology disruption. Then along comes the manufacturing processes reform, starting with the Model T Ford. And this was an amazing piece of progress because prior to this method of production, every car had to be made one unit at a time, one by one, hand-built. So this manufacturing process really revolutionized the way we thought about construction and manufacturing and assembly. But then along comes computer technology, Moore's Law. Are you familiar with Moore's Law? This is the law that Gordon Moore, the founder of Intel, wrote in the 1960s, saying that every 2 years, the computing power of a chip, an integrated circuit or microchip, would double every 2 years, while the cost would reduce or stay the same. And so when you apply Moore's Law to this industry, you get further technology development, such as the introduction of robotics. This is the Tesla factory in the United States, showing that now you don't even need humans very much on the production line. A lot of this production can be done by technology, and it's just the finishing work that is done by the humans. So technology continues to disrupt industry and employment patterns in dynamic ways. Here is a protest in Berlin for Uber just a few weeks ago. Now this is typical disruption of a new technology that comes along. In the United Kingdom, when the taxi drivers had a strike for Uber, guess what happened? Well, the downloads of Uber's app on the day of the taxi strike increased 700%. I don't think this is what the taxi drivers have planned. Here's the question. Who is protesting Uber's technology? Is it the consumer? No, it's the taxi industry. Why does the taxi industry protest Uber? Well, it turns out, you should know this if you're in the banking industry, One of the highest performing asset classes in the world is a taxi medallion. The average taxi medallion in the United States has historically made a 600% annual return. This is a phenomenal performance. This model, now under threat with Uber, is a serious challenge to the taxi industry. And so this is why the taxi industry is protesting. But the taxi industry has made a mistake here because they think that Uber is about getting people from A to B like it is with taxis. What Uber has taught us is that it's about something else. It's about the whole experience. Have you tried Uber? Okay, so how it works is you pull out your phone, you have an app on your phone, and you can order your taxi on the app, and you can see on the map, the GPS, the taxi driver coming to you, and it will tell you exactly how long the driver will take before he arrives. And you can see the car coming on the map. When I was in Munich a few weeks ago, it was just at the end of Oktoberfest, and instead of the car on the map, they had a pretzel. I thought it was very clever, right? Better than having a bratwurst at least, okay? This experience is interesting because, you know, when you have ordered a taxi in the past and you're running late for an appointment, you know how stressful it is, right? Where is my taxi? I'm going to be late. Where is this guy? With Uber, you don't have that because you can see exactly where he's coming and when he will arrive. So this is part of the experience that they improved. Secondly, for taxi drivers, if you work for a taxi company today, you get paid at the end of the month, traditionally, by the taxi company. Uber drivers get paid every day. So this is an innovation. They've innovated in terms of the way the taxi drivers work. But they also have innovated with payments. So when you complete your journey with Uber, you just get out of the car. There's no swipe, there's no tap. You don't need any to pull out your wallet. It's very simple. So this is a real experience. In fact, we anticipated or predicted 10 years ago that you would use your phone to pay for a taxi. This is a screen grab from a Microsoft video in 2005 showing a woman getting out of a taxi to visit a bank branch and the taxi payment being done through the smartphone. It was a little bit different from the smartphones we have today because she had to click the stylus on the screen, but you could see she had to pay with her phone. We predicted this. What we didn't predict was we wouldn't need a taxi company at all. This we didn't see coming. So when we look back at our predictions regarding smartphones, this is what we thought mobile phones would look like 10 years ago. We thought they would be little computers that we would use. And Steve Jobs and Johnny Ives and other design paradigms like this changed our view of this computing technology. Yes, they're very powerful computers, but they're now very human devices. We carry around these devices in our pockets, and they're a connection of us. They're an extension of our own personality. But to illustrate how powerful the smartphone and the tablet you have is today, let me illustrate it this way. This is the stack of technology or computers that Bank of America had in their data center in 1985. The total processing power of these 7 IBM mainframes was 40 gigaflops. Where's Herr Mueller? He might understand what 40 gigaflops is, right? But this is a measurement of the processing power. So how powerful is your smartphone today? Well, it's 30 times that entire stack of technology. Your phone is 30 times more powerful than all of the computers Bank of America had in 1985. That's incredible. Or you remember Neil Armstrong? The first man on the moon. When Neil Armstrong went to the moon, the Apollo guidance computer inside the Apollo spacecraft had a 1 kilohertz processor. Your smartphone or tablet today is 2 million times more powerful than that computer. It's incredible, right? What do we do with all this supercomputer technology we have in our pockets? Well, we play Flappy Bird, Angry Bird, and update our Facebook status, right? So this technology has not necessarily become more about computing. It's about the fact that the computing has almost disappeared. It's starting to disappear. It's becoming more human. We're having it less invasive. It's less about the technology as it is now more about our behavior and enabling that. And I want you to keep that in mind when we talk about banking in the future, because this is absolutely critical. When the smartphones came along, we thought we would be buying flowers and books and movies and watching movies and listening to music on our smartphones. We didn't anticipate that these devices would result in an explosion of content creation, right? The selfie, the little home movies we do, things like this. The sharing of content has accelerated at an incredible rate. In 2008, we anticipated that the entire world in 2015 would generate 1 zettabyte of content. Do you know what a zettabyte is? Well, you know what a gigabyte is, right? Gigabyte, what comes after gigabyte? Terabyte, then a petabyte, then an exabyte, then a zettabyte. What comes after zettabyte? A yottabyte, named after Yoda out of Star Wars. I don't know how that works, but... So a zettabyte is a lot of content. And it turns out that this year, we will do 9 zettabytes of content, 9 times what we thought back in 2008 that we would do. Why? Because of this type of factor, content creation on the smartphones, social media, Facebook, these sorts of things. To put this in perspective, we have throughout all of history produced 130 million book titles through all of history. And today we produce that same amount of content more than 1,000 times a second, 80 million times a day. This is incredible, right? So this explosion of content creation has created some real outliers, such as this gentleman. His name is PewDiePie. He is the #1 star on YouTube today. He's a YouTube blogger. He gets 400 million views per month to his YouTube channel. This is the same as what FIFA got during the World Cup. And he does this every month. To compare, if you take CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all of these cable news networks in the United States, PewDiePie gets 30 times their traffic on a monthly basis. What does he do? He plays video games. He plays video games and records them for others to watch. Now, you might say, I've never heard of PewDiePie, but guess what? His real name is Felix Arvid Kjellberg. He's from Sweden. Your kids, if you have kids, they probably know him. Okay? This is where he has influence. So you say, well, you know, he's not important to my generation, but for your kids, this is the new star. These are the guys that have influence. This is the guys that make purchase decisions, create purchase intent. Recently, he reviewed a game called Goat Simulator. You know, goat, the farm animal. It's actually a game that you play a goat. It's a simulator of a goat. Crazy, right? He reviewed it, and he had so much fun playing this. He thought it was ridiculous, but he had fun. Immediately the next day, Goat Simulator was the #1 app on the iTunes store. That's the influence that PewDiePie has. So these millennials, your kids, my children, who have grown up in a world with technology, we have to understand that for them, a tablet or a smartphone or internet access is not new. We call these alternative channels. We talk about multi-channel, omni-channel, alternative channel banking, because for us, we're trying to describe a world that has changed. It's different from the world we're used to. But for our children, technology is not new. It's not different. It's just normal. They expect technology to be in everything they do. So when you say, I'm sorry, you can't do that on technology, you have to come down the branch and sign a piece of paper, they're like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. And you say, well, the regulator requires us to get a signature. I still don't understand. So this is a behavior that we are going to have to change to be relevant in their world. We are not going to be able to train them to think like their parents. This is a good illustration. They don't understand what these things are. This is a great tweet from a friend of mine in Australia. He said, my daughters asked me what a sex tape was. And it took him a moment to realize they weren't asking about the sex, they didn't know what a tape was, right? I thought this was a very good illustration, right? So this behavior that these kids exhibit is fundamentally different. The Gen Y, the millennials, will surpass baby boomers in 2 years' time in terms of earnings, and by 2023, they will surpass Gen X as well, which makes them our most important customer segment moving forward. I know you're going to start talking about, well, the baby boomers have the money, and they're investing in wealth management and all of that. If you don't have a Gen Y millennial focus today, then you won't have a business in 2020. That's how critical this is. And guess what? They don't visit the branch because they don't understand what tape decks are. It's the same correlation. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. When they need a mortgage or they need investment advice, they're going to come back to the branch. We'll get to that. I get asked this question a lot. Okay, fair enough, things are changing. So tell me, who is the digital bank? The digital pure play bank we should most be worried about as a bank? Who is this competitor that's going to come along and take the customers away from us? Is it going to be Movin? Is it going to be Simple? Well, probably not because they were acquired by BBVA, but is it going to be Fido Bank? Which is the digital bank that's going to be challenging us as a bank here in Germany? Well, I thought I would use Commerce Bank. Where's Stefan? I thought I would use Commerce Bank as an example here. The reality is, it's not one bank that's going to challenge you. Here's an example of a few startups that are doing parts of the banking experience in a different way today. And you can see there is a lot of them. Just in the United States alone, there's over 1,700 mobile payment startups, just in the United States. So you can see when it comes to the debit account or the checking account, current account, to payments, to investment advice, to securities models, to wealth management, to mortgage, to life insurance, to insurance brokerage. Every part of the financial services landscape experience is being disrupted right now. Now, each one of these companies is taking one small part of the banking experience, one product, and they're doing it very, very well, optimizing the distribution model, reducing the cost of acquisition, changing the experience to make it as zero friction, low friction as possible. And if you're going to compete with all of these players, you have to do that on every single product and service you have. That's really tough. So don't think about this as who is the competitor you need to be aware of. This is a complete Uberization of the banking experience, changing every experience, every product and service. And these guys can do it better, faster, and cheaper because they don't have the legacy infrastructure and they don't have the same thinking. They have no one in their compliance department saying, you can't do that because we still need a signature on a piece of paper. That's not the way they work. So we are going to be challenged by this because the rate of change from all of these startups that are challenging the banking model is so rapid and so quick that very quickly we're going to find ourselves out of date if we don't change also. Now, we've been doing a lot of work on building branches of the future. So this is the Q110 branch, one of the first branches of the future. Commerce Bank showed us also their branch of the future. But here's the problem. Why are we building branches of the future? Well, we know that traffic in the branch is declining, yeah? So we're trying to get people back into the branch. Have you seen these figures? These are figures from Europe in terms of the declining branch activity. We've seen a 60% decline in the number of annual visits per customer to a bank branch just in the last 10 years. But if you go back to 1995, it's more like a 90% decline. So in 1995, we would visit a branch twice a month. In most of Europe, by 2016, most customers won't visit a branch, and the remaining customers will visit a branch once or twice a year at most. Now, we thought branches were about relationships with customers, yeah? You can't have a relationship with a customer who doesn't visit your branch or visits your branch only once a year. That's not possible. That's not enough to have a relationship with a customer. particularly when they might be using their mobile app 3 or 4 times a day, which could translate to 900 times a year. So how would you compete if they only visit a branch once a year with a mobile startup who speaks to them 900 times a year? You cannot. But here's the core problem. We are trying to design branches of the future because we think that the reason customers are decreasing their visits to the branch is a design problem. That we don't have enough technology, that we're not selling the products in the right way, that we're not giving enough service. We have to get rid of the tellers and give our people iPads. This is what we think it's a design problem. It's not, it's a behavior problem. People are not visiting bank branches because they just don't need to. And designing new branches is not going to change that. So why are we doing branches of the future? We have to ask a very serious question about this. And some think that this mobile revolution is about putting a plastic card in your phone. That you can now use your phone to pay instead of plastic. But the point is not that you use your phone to pay or it's faster or it's easier. The point is that if you think about the artifacts of the bank today, such as this card, what can this card tell me if I'm a millennial or a Gen Y? It's dumb. It can tell me nothing. It can only tell me if the transaction is approved or declined. Today, in today's world for millennials, that's not enough data. This is the problem with the plastic card. It's not that you need it in your phone to reduce your space in your wallet. It just doesn't give you any feedback, zero information. And then we thought that mobile was about fitting internet banking on a smaller screen. We say online mobile banking, right? But now we've learned that it's neither of these things. It's not a mobile wallet and it's not mobile internet banking. The key for mobile is engagement. Let me put it this way. Google calls this the toothbrush test. How many times a day do you use your toothbrush? You don't have to answer in front of everybody, right? But maybe once, twice, 3 times a day. So then the question is, how do you get them using your bank 3 times a day? This is the challenge. And guess what? They're never going to visit a bank branch 3 times a day. But they might use a mobile 3 times a day, but not to check their balance, not to transfer funds. But if you could use the mobile to give them advice, help them make financial decisions. Maybe, can I afford to buy this new iPhone? If I would like to buy a new car, how much could I spend every month? Asking these sort of questions and getting an answer in real time, this is great advice that we could do with the phone. But it's more than that. It's the problem of engagement. How do we engage our customers in a relationship today? It has to be digitally for millennials. A branch is not how they're going to form relationships. They're going to form relationships through technology with your brand. So we have to engage them with that technology. And I know what you're saying, right? You're looking at this picture and you're saying, this sums it up. This is the problem with kids today. They're always looking down at their phones, never communicating. It wasn't like that in my day, you know? Okay. Point made, right? So this future is different. Now, the technology of the smartphone, though, is just the start. Smart watches, smart glasses, smart rings, all of these things are emerging into the world and changing the way we interact. But I want you to understand that the smartphone is just the start in this. This shift around this technology is about something else. It's about feedback loops. It's about engaging you and understanding you. And this is where smartwatches are changing the game. This is the Apple Watch. You can see it has 4 sensors in the watch that measure your heart rate and other biometric data. You can actually, if you buy a his and hers watch, you buy a watch for your girlfriend or your wife or both, I don't know. But if you buy a couple of these watches and you give your wife one of your watches, you can feel her heartbeat on your watch. Pretty freaky, huh? Yeah? So you're sitting there in a business meeting and suddenly... What's going on over there? Are you exercising or... Okay. So The interesting thing about this technology is that it's going to start to learn about us, take information in. So the first stage of this that we've seen with these sensors is what we call the quantified self, using this technology to inform us about how fit we are, how many steps we've taken in a day, and how much activity we've done. All this is very good. But the next iteration of this is where our technology will actually tell us when we need to go and see a doctor. It'll tell us if our blood pressure is too low, or this is really good advice. And this is where we have thought in the past that a banker in a branch or a financial advisor or an agent for insurance is the best person at giving advice. But now this technology can give advice in real time every day. This is the big shift. This is the big change for banking that's going to happen. So what we're finding out is that intelligence and advice can be given in all sorts of ways with technology. This is a smart cup or a smart glass. You pour your drink inside the cup and it'll tell you how many calories you're about to drink in your cup. This is called Vessel, V-E-S-S-Y-L. It's a startup that was launched on Kickstarter, and they've launched this product a few months ago. Or these ones, which are smart chopsticks. So if you live in China, one of the problems is that they have restaurants that will use recycled oil. And when you have cooking oil that's been used more than once, it starts to degrade and it can produce cancer-producing carcinogens, right? So you can't tell when you eat the food that it's been cooked in bad oil unless you use smart chopsticks. Because when they pick up the food, it can register and will give you a warning on your smartwatch or your smartphone that the food is contaminated. Now, this is great advice, right? Pretty smart, huh? But I want you to sort of take you a bit outside of your comfort zone and illustrate this. I want to show you a Japanese pop star. Her name is Hatsune Miku. She has recently come to fame in Japan a few years ago. She's touring with Lady Gaga in the United States right now. You heard of Lady Gaga, right? So Miku came to popularity in Japan a few years ago, mainly through social media. But you might notice that there's something a little different about Miku. Watch this video. Different about her yet? Well, she's an avatar. We actually call her a Vocaloid because the technology that we're using here, the base technology, was first produced as a voice synthesis software. So you could sing karaoke but change your voice. You could change it into Miku's voice or sound of a robot or whatever. When they advertised or promoted this software in Japan, they used this anime character to illustrate her voice. And within 6 weeks, more than 10,000 songs had been uploaded to the internet from amateur bands and from people recording songs using Miku's voice. And then something interesting happened. A band called Supercell in Japan decided to record a single using Miku's voice. This went to #1 immediately. And then they produced an album and it went to #1. So when you have #1 selling albums and #1 selling songs, you need to have a concert, right? There's only one problem. They didn't have anyone to perform, because there's a piece of software. So they came up with this 3D projection technology, and when they pan out like this on the stage, you can see the screen. They use a €1 million projector to project Miku's image onto this screen. But do you see how many kids there are at this concert? This concert's in Sapporo in Japan. There's over 40,000 kids at this concert, all rocking out, and they've probably heard of Miku through YouTube or social media. Not through billboards or newspaper or TV commercials or traditional advertising. This is how they've come to know Miku. I want you to understand this. Think about this. Think about the kids who will go and see a concert to watch an avatar perform, a piece of software. Do you really think that these millennials who are very comfortable going to watch an avatar perform a concert, watching a piece of software. Do you really, truly believe that when they need a mortgage or an insurance policy, they'll come and see a human in a bank branch? Really? You see the problem we've got, right? We are trying to think about ways to get these kids to change their behavior to be like their parents. That's not going to happen. We have to change our approach. So how does this pan out for us? Well, this machine intelligence, things like high-frequency trading systems, dark pools, is showing us that computer algorithms can actually be very good at giving advice. High-frequency trading algorithms in the US account for 73% of US equity trading today because they're better at it than humans. We used to think that stock trading had to be done by a human with asset management training and maybe a CFA license and things like this because we needed a human and his knowledge to be able to trade. No longer the case. Or in the field of medicine. Now IBM Watson is being used in financial advisory space and in medical. In New York State, IBM has gone and got Watson, this machine intelligence, to sit the New York medical examiner's diagnostician exam because now Watson is giving advice to doctors. In the field of cancer, Watson is 90% accurate at detecting and diagnosing cancer like lung cancer, liver cancer, pancreas cancer, things like this, where human doctors only get it right 50% of the time, 1 in 2 times. So now you know that. Would you insist on getting your advice from a doctor, or would you rather get your advice from a machine? Well, maybe you might say, I'd rather the doctor use the machine. That might be the best of both worlds, but here's the point. Advice is changing. Now, if you still require your customers to sign a piece of paper, we've got a real problem because they can't execute a product or a service revenue in real time if a piece of paper is involved. And millennials aren't going to sign a piece of paper. So if you want revenue beyond 2017, you must have your products and services digitized. And the way this is going to pan out is it's going to be highly contextual. So this context is what will lead us to revenue in the future, not location, not products. It'll be about context and advice. So this is Movin', our app in New York. You can see we have the balance at the top of the screen. This is a real-time transaction receipt. And you pay with your phone using NFC, and you'll have the amount of the transaction, and then we categorize that transaction. For example, if you went to a coffee shop, how much you've spent on dining out this month already. And we do that in real time. And then you see the spending meter, which shows you whether you're above or below your average spending for this time of the month. So at a glance, you can see whether you're being financially healthy or whether you're spending too much. Oh, and by the way, when customers open a Movin' account, they download the app and they sign up in the app. It takes 2 minutes. Now, here's interesting statistics for you. Our cost of acquisition is $23 per customer. That's the lowest of any bank in the United States or any a bank account in the United States. And we have a 70% conversion off download. So these results are fantastic. But you have to understand, customers don't buy a mortgage. They buy a home. So removing the friction of the mortgage process and just allowing a customer to buy a home is the best experience they can have. They don't buy a car loan or a car lease. They buy a car. So again, helping them buy the car is the experience they want from their bank. Not, hey, stop buying the car, come down the branch, sign a piece of paper, and maybe if you're lucky and you're not too risky, in a few days we might let you have an answer. That's just friction. That's not a good experience anymore. It's now a bad experience that stops me from buying a car. This is the shift. And for millennials, this is where it's going to matter, the experience. So I want you to think about it this way. In the future, it's not going to be just mobile internet banking or mobile web. We've moved from mobile web to apps. The next generation of this technology is real-time engagement. Notifications that come on your phone or your smartwatch or your smart glasses that give you advice and can help you solve a problem in real time. And the bank as a platform is just a part of that. These notifications is this next generation. Here's an example of what we do with Movin. So if you walk into a grocery store and you're going to buy 400 euros of groceries, that's what you average do, but you only have 100 euro in your bank account, we can know that. So we can then give you a message as you walk in the grocery store. We can give you 200 or 300 euro emergency cash. The fee is 7 euro. Immediate, transparent line of credit with an immediate result that solves a problem for you. It's a mixture of advice, it's a mixture of service. The product has disappeared and just become part of the experience. You don't need to go to the branch, you don't need to sign a piece of paper. Very low friction. I want you to think about that. The future of banking is not based on a location. It's advice at the right time. And in this respect, like that head-up display for a fighter pilot, you cannot compete with this type of advice with a bank branch. It's just not possible. We used to think the branches had the best people with the best advice, or financial advisors. Now we're realizing that they just can't compete with advice in the real time delivered by technology that also generates revenue in real time with zero friction. That's the future of the bank account, it's the future of bank engagement, and it's the future of banks and their replacements through startups, as we say. Revenue is connected to real time. Bankers are no longer bankers, they're technologists, storytellers, statisticians, and your bank account is not a physical artifact, it's your phone. That's the future. And thank you again for the opportunity to launch Breaking Banks here today, and I'd be very happy to take a few questions, and during the break, if you'd like to give you an autograph on the book. Thank you very much.